Welcome to the NASCAR on NBC post Dover edition. Denny Hamlin scores his third win of the season, conquering the Monster Mile and holding off Kyle Larson the last several laps to claim the victory. And Parker, the buzzword after Sunday's race was air blocking. So explain to me what that is and what you're doing inside the car to achieve that.
Well, it's a nice buzzword, but it's nothing new. So this has been around for probably I don't know as long as we've had aero. Sometimes we didn't know we were doing it, and other times we've now discovered we're really strategic and we've given it a name, like a lot of things in racing. What it is it's that front car basically changing their line to put themselves in front of the car behind them, therefore disrupting the air for the car behind them and making it harder for them to use a lane that they are going faster in. So you see this all the time, like you saw between Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson here, where a car that's running maybe a top lane, like Larson was, is making time. He's making headway. So what does the car in front do? They get told, one, by their spotter, two, they can look in the mirror or the camera within the next gen car and say, hey, that looks like a pretty fast line. I'm going to move up to use that line and do two things. One, potentially go faster because there's more grip up there, or they're finding speed utilizing that line just like the other driver behind them. Or you are also basically making the air worse for the car behind you. And especially in this next gen car where the air is super concentrated behind the rear wheels. Imagine sort of the wake of a boat. This is like a very small rowing boat in terms of how the wake behind the car comes out compared to like the Xfinity car, which is like a wakeboarding boat. It has a huge wake behind it. For the next gen car, it's super concentrated. So if you place your car perfectly in front of that car behind you, it's going to get massively dirtier air. And that's exactly what Denny Hamlin did to Kyle Larson. And obviously, Kyle called it the aero blocking, which we've termed here. Now, remember, this is something that we talked about with Ross Chastain just 2 years ago, and how good he is at this and how well he's done it. And he's someone that actually taught me how to do it better. And that is that he finds a way at times to adjust his line super late at the time, the entry point of the corner. So basically, you think you're following him, you think he's going to go high, so you go low, and he sees that. He's able to basically change his line so quickly to not allow you to have that clean air. He's one of the best at it, and therefore you end up in the situation between Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin where you know you're going to use it to your advantage. It's nothing new. Denny did nothing wrong. It's just the form and nature of this racing. And as long as there's air, there will be aero blocking.
Talk about form. That was good form on Denny Hamlin there with that baseball swing. Is referencing the Ruth shot, the Babe Ruth that he called this earlier in the week that he was going to win. But so you talk about being in the leader's point of view. Okay, obviously Kyle Larson is one of the greatest drivers of this generation, and he could not get by Denny Hamlin. So what was he going through? What can a driver do? What are the challenges when you're that trailing driver? Because as you said, this is nothing new. I think back, you talk about Ross Chastain. I think back to, was it a few years ago at Kansas when Joey Logano held off Kevin Harvick for 40 some laps. And again, that I think it was 2020 or so. So again, this is nothing new, but when you're behind it, it's not easy. But what are the things? What are you trying to do as the trailing driver?
And that's a great memory because remember of Joey Logano and Kevin Harvick, that wasn't this next gen car. That
Yeah.
is even the older car, right? So, and it's something we fight in Xfinity every weekend. We're doing the same things. We're trying to dirty up that air. So for Larson, who's the trailing car, trying to pass the car that he believes is aero blocking him in the next gen car, one of the things you may have noticed, you've seen it at Kansas, is that you can actually create a little bit more downforce on your car as the trailing car by just peeking your nose out because that wake is so concentrated in the next gen car behind it, just behind, the center of the car, you can actually make more effect on your car by just peeking out. Whereas, say, for the Xfinity car or the prior Cup Series car, you had to be in an entirely different lane, right, to get that clean air because the wake of the car was so large. So it's really a game of inches at times. When you look at Dover that late in a run, look how much rubber is across the racetrack. You are, as a driver, you're searching for areas where there's less rubber, meaning you can get more grip. You're trying to find a way to get your car to rotate in the center of the corner on top of that rubber so you can get back into the throttle. And so for Larson, once your line gets taken away like that he's utilizing up top, you really only have the choice of trying to basically be a little bit lower offset as you see him do at times. He runs a little higher through the middle, trying to just get some cleaner air to the right front of his race car and get that car turned. And then he has the other choice, which is obviously going to an entirely different line, maybe heading to the bottom of the racetrack and trying to utilize less distance and maybe find some more grip down there as he does right here, right behind Denny Hamlin. So that's really your only options, basically to try and get away from that car using an entirely different lane or to offset your car just slightly so that you get some cleaner air to the front of it, allowing it to turn and get some downforce. So it's it can really be a game of inches. And there's no right or wrong way, right? There's no way to say what Larson was doing was right or wrong, right? If he's making speed on the high side and he's catching the 11, that's the correct thing to be doing that time. But when the 11 moves up, from there it becomes exploratory. Where can he also make that speed to try and get beside the 11, to put the 11 in a compromising position and hopefully make a pass? He just was able to do it.
You talk about game of inches. A key moment in the race was the restart with 72 laps to go. Kyle Larson's the leader. He takes the preferred lane on the outside. Denny Hamlin second. He's on the inside. But yet, here's a case where we see the car on the inside, Denny Hamlin, eventually take the lead. And that's where he took control of the race. Now, one of the things Larson said is he went late in the box. And he said before he went, Truex, who was behind him in the outside row, hit him. And that kind of disrupted things. So, Parker, take me inside the driver's seat. And how could a bump from a car behind you impact on what you do on the restart, and how it might have played a role in this sense of disrupting the timing for Larson and allowing Denny Hamlin to take the lead and take control of the race at that point?
So a bump like that can disturb you massively, right? And it's because what happens in the restart zone is a sequence of events, right? As the leader, you're controlling the pace. You get to that restart zone, you're allowed to control when you restart the race within that zone. And so it gives you some options, creative, to be creative in that zone. But it also means you want to time things out. You're sort of loading the car up on the brake, have the throttle at the right place. You're trying to time where your car is pointed, how it's coming out of the banking, especially at Dover there, and how you're going to get back the throttle, and also time versus the driver beside you so that you maybe can catch them off guard, right? You're doing all those things, but the car behind you, like Martin Truex, can disrupt all of that by giving you a little bump. And it can disrupt him as much as you see Truex actually falls back because what he was doing is trying to anticipate when the 5 was going to go. He gets it wrong. He bumps in the 5. He has to check up. Then the 5 goes, and it leaves Martin looking like a sitting duck there and loses a car length, 2 car lengths by the time they get to turn 1. That's because he had rolled too early trying to anticipate what the 5 was doing. And then for Larson, when it disrupts you, it can make you spin your tires because the car is a little bit more unsettled. Maybe you try to get back to the throttle a little harder than you were anticipating. And then to add on top of all that, Dover itself as a restart zone there is incredibly tough. It's still in the banking. It's very awkward. The top is the preferred restart line. But the funny thing about Dover is we see often if the outside car doesn't get a really good launch, that inside car can have a lot of leverage and control down into turn 1 and on the bottom can make, just using distance alone can make up time, get beside them and then fight them down to 3 and 4 or clear that outside car, even though the outside is the preferred lane to actually restart in the box. So it's a really complex scenario of events that happen there, but it's also just a really tough restart zone in itself. Add in that your competitors can affect you like Martin did to Larson, and you end up with a restart like Larson had, which was not in his favor.
You explained the benefits of going late in the restart by noting if you're the leader, the car behind, in this case, Truex behind Larson, tried to anticipate and it messed him up. But by going late, Larson also, the timing is off because of that bump. So as a driver, how do you determine when you're going to go in that zone, early or late? Obviously, there was a lot of talk a few weeks ago about Denny Hamlin going right before the zone at Richmond and taking advantage of that. I would think in a sense it would be easy. Why not just go as soon as soon as you get into that zone so you don't have some of those issues? I know that everybody can anticipate, but what are you doing in the car? And do you have an idea, or is it pretty much once you get there, you're waiting to see what everybody else does, and then you're essentially reacting even though you're ahead of them?
So it's a really scientific term, Dustin. Guessing. I'm kidding. No, everyone has a different strategy. Everyone's looking at different data as to what they believe to be the best line, right? There's, as we talk about the outside being the preferred restart line, that is the data shows us that more often than not, a car that restarts in the outside line either holds their position or gains positions, right? So that tells you that's the preferred lane. Maybe it has more grip. It's a better spot there. Maybe it gives you a better angle into turn 1, that sort of thing. And then going early versus late, there was with the deal with Denny, that was sort of a common methodology that has come over the sport in the last couple of years, which was that late in the race, as the leader, as a control car, your best option was to go early as you could possibly push it in that restart zone, because you catch the field off guard and you put NASCAR in a position where they don't want to have to black flag you on the last restart of a race, right? It puts the ball in their hands. Well, obviously, after his restart at Richmond, there's been a lot closer eyes on that, right? So maybe it's taken away a little bit of that option for the leader to go even just a tick before that box starts and sort of push that gray area. But going late is often something you'll do maybe just to catch the cars behind you off guard, to maybe try and get the inside car almost baited into rolling like Martin Truex did early on Larson, then have to check up, then you go, right? Which gives you a huge advantage down to turn one. So there's all sorts of games that happen on restarts in that zone. And I think that's the best way to explain it, is that there's no exact way to do it. It's you're playing a mental game, a physical game, and you're trying to time it all out in your favor within that tight zone to give yourself the best launch against all your competitors and hopefully catch them off guard.
Another key moment in the race on Sunday was a little bit before halfway. Now, obviously, on Saturday, Ryan Truex had won the Xfinity race. Martin Truex Jr. on Sunday was in control, and suddenly you're thinking, is this going to be another Truex family weekend in victory lane? But things changed during a green flag pit cycle on lap 183. Kyle Larson came in and pit. He had a 9.9-second pit stop. Truex comes in as the leader the next lap, but he has a 12.7-second pit stop, and Larson leapfrogs Truex to take the lead and take control of the race. Truex never gets back to the front of the field. Look, there's a lot of challenges there, and there's some things in for a driver you can't control on a pit stop. But you lose 3 seconds, and even Larson was 7/10 of a second quicker than Truex in rolling speed on pit road. So give me an example. Tell me as a driver what you can do to everything that you can do to help your pit crew to so they can have the quickest and most efficient pit stop.
It's a lot. There's a lot of variables that go into a green flag stop, especially at Dover. So Dover's one of the trickiest pit roads to get on under green because of the way the speed you approach that pit road, the way the banking works, and the difference in grip between the concrete surface that you race on and then the actual asphalt surface that you go onto on the apron. It's an entirely different grip level there, and I think they played the Matt Kenseth special highlight many a times this weekend where he runs in the tire barriers. That's the worst thing that could possibly happen to you. But mostly what happens is you can either overcook it getting into turn 3 and trying to get on pit road. And so there's a lot of time to be made up there if you do it correctly, getting on the pit road. Then once you're on to pit road and you're going down the actual pit lane, what you mentioned is rolling time. So what is that? That is the time as the driver that you're on pit road trying to go as fast and as close to the maximum speed as possible along that whole pit road. Well, remember, the beginning of that pit road is curved. So you can actually go faster through the curve section than the actual pit road speed because it's all time over distance, right? Or speed over distance. And then basically what happens is it gets straight. You have to then back off to a different speed. And so as a driver, there's a little bit of timing there, right? One driver can push it a little further than the other. And then obviously it's about being as close to your maximum speed on your lights and sort of what your team and you have set as the spot that you want to be at on pit road speed wise, and staying as close as you possibly can down the whole pit road. And then the last part of what the driver can make a difference in is getting into the box and out of the box. And we have metrics for all this. So don't worry. We track all of these things and we get a report after every race. And basically, so that separates the rolling time from your actual pit stop, and it gives you the time that you as a driver got slowed down and into the box as quick as possible, and how well you accelerated out of the pit box. So it's highly complex. There's a lot of a lot of places as a driver you can make or lose time. And then one thing to note is on a green flag stop, for your roll time and your actual speed on pit road, that is one thing that a lot of drivers and teams will actually be a little bit more conservative on green flag stops because the penalty for speeding can be so great compared to the penalty of speeding under caution. So some teams and drivers may just be a slightly more conservative under green just because you don't want to get caught in a hot zone where the timing zone is just a little quicker than you think, and you end up speeding on pit road and have to come back down pit road on a green, which can be many laps lost at a place like Dover.
Well, that was Dover. Denny Hamlin gets the win. Now NASCAR heads off to Kansas this weekend.
Hi, I'm Parker Kligerman. For more access like this from Pit Road, be sure to click and subscribe to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube channel.